The vampire king humiliated his pregnant wife at the gala. Then her powerful brothers arrived. The crystal chandelier cast dancing shadows across the grand ballroom of Castle Nightshade, each light a tiny star in an ocean of darkness. Isabel stood near the marble balcony, one hand pressed protectively against her swollen belly, the other clutching a champagne flute she hadn't touched. The emerald gown clung to her frame, expensive and beautiful, but it felt like chains wrapped around her growing body. "You look absolutely dreadful tonight," a sharp voice cut through her thoughts. She turned to find her husband, King Adrian, standing with a glass of blood wine in his elegant hand. His dark eyes that had once made her believe in impossible love, now held nothing but contempt. The vampire king was stunning, she had to admit that. Pale skin like porcelain, midnight hair falling past his shoulders, and a presence so commanding that even the air seemed to bow before him. But beauty, she'd learned the hard way, could house the cruelest souls. "I thought you wanted me here tonight," Isabel replied quietly, though her heart was screaming. The baby kicked, a gentle reminder that she wasn't alone in her suffering. Adrian laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "I wanted a queen, not this." Swollen embarrassment. "Look at yourself. You're waddling like a common peasant carrying a merchant's bastard child. The most prestigious vampire families are watching, and this is what I present as my wife." The words landed like daggers. Around them, guests began to notice the exchange, their conversations dying down as they sensed the drama unfolding. Isabel felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. She'd wanted this night to be special, a chance to finally feel like she belonged in this world her husband ruled with an iron fist. "The baby is yours, Adrian, your heir," she whispered, but her voice shook. "Is it?" He stepped closer, his presence suffocating. "How convenient that you became pregnant just when you realized I was considering a second wife. A pure-blooded vampire, mind you, not some human half-breed who'll burden me with a mediocre offspring." Gasps echoed through the ballroom. A second wife, the words hung in the air like a death sentence. Isabel's hand unconsciously moved to her belly, protecting what grew there. She opened her mouth to respond, but Adrian wasn't finished. "You know what's pathetic?" He circled her like a predator. "I actually believed you were special, that your humanity made you interesting, but you're just another desperate woman trying to trap a powerful man with a child. How predictable." The crowd had stopped pretending not to watch. Noble vampires with centuries of experience whispered behind ornate fans. Isabel could see the pity in some eyes, the cruel amusement in others. She'd entered this world as a human among immortals, and now they were watching her drown in it. Before she could respond, before she could even process the full weight of his betrayal, the ballroom doors exploded inward. 3 men stood in the doorway, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop by 20 degrees. They weren't vampires, Isabel could tell by the way they moved, fluid and deadly in a completely different way. The one in the center was broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes so fierce they looked like they could burn through steel. His tailored black suit did nothing to hide the raw power radiating from him. Behind him stood 2 more men, equally imposing. Their resemblance was unmistakable. Family. "Gentlemen, welcome," Adrian said smoothly, though Isabel detected a flicker of something in his voice, uncertainty, perhaps even fear. "I don't believe we've met. I am." "We know who you are," the man in the center interrupted. His voice was deep, controlled, dangerous in a way that made even the ancient vampires in the room shift uncomfortably. He walked into the ballroom without invitation, his 2 companions flanking him. "I'm Dmitri Volkov, and that woman you just humiliated, she's my sister." Isabel's eyes went wide. Her brothers, her powerful, terrifying brothers had finally come. The silence that followed was absolute. Not a single vampire dared to breathe audibly. Dmitri Volkov, the name alone carried weight, power, and promise of retribution. Everyone in the supernatural world knew it. He was a business mogul, a man who'd built an empire through ruthlessness and brilliant strategy. His organization touched every corner of the globe, human and supernatural world alike. Adrian's face had gone pale, paler than usual for a creature of eternal night. His hand tightened around his wine glass so much that it shattered, blood wine dripping like actual blood onto the marble floor. "I see there's been a misunderstanding," Adrian began, his diplomatic mask slipping back into place though it was visibly cracked. "Family matters, I'm sure. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." No, Dimitri said, his eyes never leaving Isabel. I think everyone here deserves to hear what you've got to say. After all, they heard your little performance. He walked across the ballroom, his footsteps echoing like a funeral march. When he reached Isabel, he gently took her arm, his touch surprisingly tender in contrast to the barely contained violence radiating from him. Her other brother, the one with copper-colored hair and sharp features, immediately moved to her other side. My sister came to this world as your wife with hope in her heart, Dimitri began, his voice measured but carrying the weight of a judge delivering a death sentence. She carried your child, your heir despite the risks to her human body, and this is how you treat her. She's my wife. What happens between us is none of your concern, Adrian snapped, his fear turning to anger. This is vampire territory. You have no authority here. The third brother, the youngest with dark blonde hair and a smile that suggested he was the most dangerous of them all, actually laughed. No authority? Oh, that's rich. Let me educate you, bloodsucker. Our family owns the building you're standing in. 3 of the major arteries that supply your precious city. Ours, the security infrastructure. Ours, the very technology that keeps your locations hidden from human authorities. Let's just say we have significant influence there. Marcus, don't be crude, Dimitri said calmly, though his eyes glinted with amusement. The point is, Adrian, you have no idea who you've been sleeping with. You didn't bother to investigate your bride beyond her pretty face and convenient availability, did you? Isabel looked up at her brother, confused. She tried to tell Adrian about her family. He'd never cared, had actually forbidden her from maintaining contact with them, calling them a distraction. Dimitri continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone making a business presentation. Isabel comes from the Volkov family. Our reach extends from Eastern Europe to the Americas. We have more wealth than some nations. We have politicians, judges, and military officials in our pockets, and we have a very strict policy about how our family is treated. She's my wife, Adrian repeated, but there was a whimper in it now. I have rights. Rights, Dimitri's laugh was dangerous. You forfeited any rights the moment you disrespected her in front of witnesses. You see, Adrian, in our world there are 2 kinds of justice. The law, which can be flexible depending on who you know, and then there's family justice. Guess which one applies here? Isabel's youngest brother, who'd introduced himself as Marcus, stepped forward. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to annul this marriage tomorrow. My sister will leave with us tonight with every penny of her dowry plus double as compensation. The child, when born, will be completely removed from your custody unless Isabel chooses otherwise. And if we hear even a whisper that you've tried to contact her or harm her, the consequences will be unpleasant, Dimitri finished quietly. The second brother, who still hadn't spoken much, placed a gentle hand on Isabel's back. Pack whatever brings you joy, sister. We need to leave. But before anyone could move, Adrian laughed. It was a broken sound, almost hysterical. You think you know the whole story. You think this is just about a king being mean to his wife. How adorably naive. He moved to the balcony and snapped his fingers. A vampire woman emerged from the crowd, beautiful, with dark hair and aristocratic features. She was dressed in white like a bride. Meet my true mate, Adrian said, his voice taking on a possessive tone that made Isabel's blood run cold. Valentina, we're bound by ancient vampire law. I cannot divorce her no matter what you threaten. Your sister knew about her before she married me. She chose to come anyway. The room exploded in gasps and shocked murmurs. Isabel felt her world shift. She looked at her brothers' faces and saw the moment they processed this information. But before anyone could respond, before the situation could spiral further, something unexpected happened. Valentina stepped forward and opened her mouth to speak, but the words that came out weren't what anyone expected. He's lying, she said, her voice cold and clear, and I can prove it. Everyone turned to stare at Valentina. Even Adrian looked shocked, his pale face flushing with anger. What are you doing? He hissed. Valentina ignored him and walked directly to Isabel. Her movement was smooth, predatory, but when she spoke, her voice carried no malice. I'm doing what should have been done months ago, she said. Then she turned to address the entire ballroom. Everything he just said is a lie. There is no ancient bond between us. I was paid by Adrian to play the role of his true mate, to give him social standing among the pure-blooded families. Apparently, marrying a human wasn't prestigious enough. Adrian's face went from pale to absolutely white. "You'll regret this." "I already regret a lot of things," Valentina interrupted. "But betraying this pregnant woman isn't one of them anymore. The money he promised me is in an offshore account I can't access. He's been using me as much as he used her, except she had the misfortune of actually loving him." She turned back to Isabel and there was genuine remorse in her eyes. "I know what he did tonight was cruel. I should have stopped it, but I was afraid. I'm sorry." Dimitri looked at Valentina with newfound respect. "Thank you for your honesty. It takes courage to go against someone with his power." "It takes something else too," another voice called out. "An elderly vampire with silver hair, a counselor by the look of his robes. It takes knowledge that this king's days are numbered anyway." Everyone turned to look at the old vampire. Adrian's composure finally shattered completely. "You have no authority over me, elder. No council has any." "That's where you're wrong," the elder said, standing up with difficulty. "I've been waiting 3 centuries for the right moment to say this, but with the Volkov family now involved, I think the truth needs to come out." The elder gestured to several other ancient vampires, and they slowly stood as well, forming a united front. "Adrian hasn't been a legitimate vampire king for the past 50 years, the elder revealed. "His father, the true king, was poisoned. We suspected it was Adrian, but we had no proof and no witnesses willing to testify. We were cowards. We allowed him to sit on a throne he had no right to claim." "That's a lie," Adrian roared. "I earned this throne through strength." "Through patricide," another elder corrected coldly. "We have testimony now. Your own sister, Princess Marissa, has come forward. She's been hiding because she was afraid you'd kill her too, but she contacted us 2 weeks ago with evidence." The ballroom descended into chaos. Noble families shouted in outrage. Some called for Adrian's execution on the spot. Others demanded a trial. The king tried to run, but the moment he moved toward the door, several ancient vampires blocked his path with their supernatural speed. In the midst of the pandemonium, Dimitri quietly took Isabel's arm. "We need to leave, now." But Isabel pulled back slightly. "Wait, what about the baby? What about my rights as his wife, as the mother of his child?" The elder turned to her, his expression kind. "By our law, a child born of a vampire king to a human woman inherits standing in our society, regardless of the king's current status. Your child will have a place here and you will have protection, but more importantly, you have your brothers." It was Marcus, the youngest, who finally smiled. "Come on, Belle, let's go home." As they walked toward the ballroom doors, Isabel turned back one last time. Adrian was being restrained by vampire guards, his face a mask of fury and desperation. Valentina watched her leave with a nod of farewell. The ball was in complete disarray, the evening's humiliation now eclipsed by scandal and political upheaval. But something about this didn't sit right with Isabel. If her brothers were so powerful, why had they let her marry Adrian in the first place? Why hadn't they investigated him more thoroughly? And more importantly, how had the elder suddenly found testimony from Adrian's sister just at this convenient moment? She glanced at Dimitri's face as they stepped into the cool night air. His jaw was set, his eyes distant. He caught her looking and quickly masked whatever he was thinking. "Dimitri," she said quietly as they approached the limousine, "why didn't you stop me from marrying him?" Her brother exchanged a glance with Marcus that made her stomach drop. "Because," Dimitri said slowly, as if choosing his words very carefully, "we needed you to marry him." The limousine pulled away from Castle Nightshade, leaving the chaos behind. Isabel sat between Dimitri and the second brother, whose name she'd learned was Sergei. The youngest, Marcus, sat across from her, and all 3 had the same expression, a mixture of guilt and grim determination. "Start from the beginning," Isabel commanded, her protective hand moving to her belly. The baby seemed to sense her distress and kicked harder. "And don't leave anything out." Dimitri sighed heavily and leaned back in his seat. "Do you remember why you wanted to leave home 5 years ago?" "Because you were all suffocating me with security. You treated me like I was made of glass," Isabel replied. "I wanted to live, to make my own choices, to fall in love on my own terms." "No," Sergei said quietly. "You left because we were using you." The words hung in the air like poison gas. "We were tracking Adrian," Dimitri continued. For 3 years before you even met him, we knew he'd killed his father. We had suspicions, but suspicions aren't evidence in the vampire world, and we needed evidence. We needed someone on the inside, someone he'd let close, someone who wasn't a threat. Isabel's heart was pounding. You mean? We orchestrated your meeting, Marcus said, his young face twisted with shame. We placed you at that gallery opening. We made sure you'd catch his eye. And when you fell in love with him, when he fell in love with you, we didn't stop it. We encouraged it. We used you, Isabel. We used your innocence and your desire for independence against you. But why? Isabel's voice shook. Why would you need me specifically? Dimitri's eyes were haunted. Because 5 years ago our youngest sister, our baby sister, disappeared. Her name was Natasha. She was human like you. And she was Adrian's first wife years before he married you. He kept her locked away in Castle Nightshade. We don't know what he did to her, but one day she simply vanished. The second bombshell. Isabel felt the ground shift beneath her. We've been searching for her ever since, Sergei said. We had surveillance teams, investigators, but Adrian's security was too tight. No one could get in. So when you wanted to leave, when you wanted to marry for love, we saw an opportunity. We trained you. We gave you a hidden communicator disguised as a jewelry piece. We had you document everything you saw, every room, every passage, every secret in that castle. Isabel's hand flew to her neck where she wore a delicate diamond pendant, the one thing she'd never taken off, even in the shower. A cold sensation spread through her chest. The entire time you were married to him, Marcus continued, his voice heavy, you were working for us. You documented every detail of the castle. And 6 months ago, when you became pregnant, Adrian became sloppy. He was angry, obsessed with finding a pure-blooded bride, and his attention wavered. That's when you found it. Found what? Isabel whispered, though part of her already knew. The room, Dimitri said quietly. The locked chamber in the east wing, the one where Natasha had been kept. Where she died. We found her remains there based on your descriptions and photographs, mummified by time and magical preservation. Tears streamed down Isabel's face. So this whole thing, my marriage, my pregnancy, my humiliation tonight, it was all part of a plan. Yes and no, Sergei said, reaching for her hand. We did use you, we manipulated you. That's unforgivable, and I won't try to justify it. But the castle elders were always going to move against Adrian eventually. Your evidence just accelerated the timeline and gave us absolute proof of his crimes beyond just the poisoning. Natasha's remains are evidence of murder, of torture. Isabel pulled her hand back. And the baby, what about my baby? We never wanted you to actually carry his child, Dimitri said, and his voice broke slightly. We wanted you to get close, gather evidence, and get out, but you became pregnant before we could extract you. And when we tried to convince you to leave, you refused. You wanted to work it out with him. You wanted to give the relationship a chance. Because I loved him, Isabel said bitterly. Yes, Marcus said quietly. And that made you both our greatest asset and our greatest liability. We had to protect you. So we set up the counselors with Adrian's sister. We orchestrated this evening to get you out before things became more dangerous. You couldn't just tell me the truth, Isabel's voice rose. You couldn't just ask me to leave. No, Dimitri said, meeting her eyes. Because you would have gone back. Love makes people irrational, Belle. We saw what he was doing to you, the way he was slowly poisoning your self-worth, isolating you from us, controlling your every move, and you refused to see it. You needed to be forced out. You needed to see him humiliated the way he'd humiliated you, as many times as he'd humiliated you. Isabel stared out the window at the city lights passing by. Everything she'd believed about herself, about her marriage, about the past 5 years, it was all a lie built on lies on top of more lies. But then she felt it. The baby kicked again, strong and insistent. A reminder that no matter how this child was conceived, no matter what manipulation had led to its creation, it was real. It was innocent. It was hers. I need to know something, she said, not turning from the window. Do you even care about me as a person, or am I just a tool you've used up? The silence that followed told her everything. Finally, Dimitri spoke. We love you, Isabel, we always have. Everything else is complicated and painful and unfair, but that's the only simple truth. We have spent 5 years of our lives trying to protect you, even if we did it wrong, even if we manipulated you while doing it. Isabel closed her eyes. I need time. I need to process this. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not being used, not being controlled, not being anyone's tool. We understand, Sergei said gently. We've prepared a place for you, a house in the countryside away from the city, fully staffed, completely secure. You can stay as long as you need. And if I want to leave, if I want to go somewhere you can't find me, Isabel asked, testing them. Then we'll let you go, Dmitri said, and she believed him. But Isabel, the baby, we need to talk about the baby. Isabel finally turned to face her brothers. What about the baby? Adrian was telling the truth about one thing, Marcus said carefully. The child does have vampire blood, even if Adrian has no right to call himself a vampire anymore. The child will be born with abilities, power. It will need guidance. It will need protection from those who'd want to use it. From people like you mean, Isabel said. Yes, Dmitri admitted. People like us, like the remaining vampire families, like mercenaries and power brokers who'd love to raise an heir with royal blood to do their bidding. The child will need us whether we want to admit it or not. Isabel put her hands on her belly, feeling the baby move beneath her palms. Her child, the only uncomplicated love in this entire mess. Then I have conditions. Anything, Sergei said. First, I want full custody and complete control over the child's upbringing. You advise, you protect, but you don't control. Second, I want complete transparency from now on. No more secrets, no more manipulation. Third, I want genuine therapy with someone who specializes in family trauma. All of us, because if we're going to be a family, we need to do it right. Dimitri's lips curved into what might have been a smile. You drive a hard bargain. I learned from the best, Isabel said coolly. Is it a deal? It's a deal, he said, extending his hand. She took it, and in that moment something shifted. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of understanding, the beginning of rebuilding something broken. Isabel held her newborn daughter in the sprawling countryside mansion, while morning light streamed through the windows. The baby had her father's pale skin but her mother's fierce dark eyes. She was perfect, and she was free. Dmitri knocked softly on the open door. Can I come in? Of course, Isabel said, and she meant it. Over the past 9 months they'd begun to rebuild their relationship on honest ground. It was difficult. There were setbacks and painful conversations, but they were trying. She's beautiful, Dmitri said, looking at his niece with something approaching tenderness. She is, Isabel agreed. I've decided on her name. I'm calling her Hope. Dmitri looked at his sister, and in that look was apology, love, regret, and determination all mixed together. Hope is a good name. It has to be, Isabel said, smiling down at her daughter, because that's all I have left. But as she said it, she realized it wasn't quite true. She had her brothers, complicated as they were. She had her daughter, untethered from her father's sins. She had her own strength, the strength that had let her survive 5 years of manipulation and humiliation and come out the other side still able to love. That was more than hope. That was redemption. The only way forward when everyone you love has deceived you is to rebuild trust from the rubble of broken promises, but choose who's worth rebuilding with. If you want the extended darker ending, join the Vampire Inner Circle. The full extended versions are available on Patreon. Link is in description. Go and watch now.